Hi everyone, Angus Campbell here. Saturday the 22nd of Feb 2020. Right, A70 head time. Do you think I've got enough? So in a previous video I sort of explained why I'd got 3 heads here and I was still unhappy. So the reason being that this is the head that came with the bike. It's a 71 onwards head, which has 3/8 bolts at the back rather than 5/16, and also has, I think these are 3/16 studs for the rocker box rather than the quarter, and also a bigger flange, and that was to try and prevent cracking and leaks, but also because the head steady on the later models is not by the legacy lug that they still put on this head from the early models, but by a plate that actually bolts to the top of the rocker box, which I showed you before. And there it is. So that's, sorry, rocker box cover, and that's the mounting for the head steady plate. Now I have got a new one of those, a pattern one, and no doubt that's going to elude us. But I also found relatively recently on eBay an original, still in its factory paint, dove grey. And of course, now I want to show you them. No, I can't find either. So that's the pattern. Cheap as chips to make, which I've had, which had coated at the same time I had the all the other parts coated with the dove grey match that I had made up specially from an original part. But that's incorrect, actually. It doesn't actually mimic too closely the style of the original, which was bent up with sides to it. There it is. That's an original. So that's what I'm going to use, and that's the original paint, and I'm just going to clean that up in common with some of the other parts, and probably I might touch it up a little bit, but I'm all for retaining originality if we can, if it's in good enough condition. So there we go, I digress. So that was the head that came with the bike, but just look at it, it's been bashed around a bit. There's huge great bits of fin missing. So I found another late head. Well, sorry, the good news on this though is it's got all its bits and pieces on it, including all the rocker box cover studs, which is good. It's got all its valves, all its rockers and all its tappets, etc. It's got the full Monty. Bit black under there, but the valves aren't pocketed, etc. So, and also it has got the balancer nipples as well, which screw in. So it's got everything, which is good. I found another head which was allegedly supposed to be good. Wasn't too expensive. Got that in. Late one again. Chunks out the fins. So, you know, we could butcher these two and make up a good one, and this would probably be the one to do it, but you're going to end up with potentially big scars. It's going to be very difficult to replicate exactly the right shape. I'm not a welder, and therefore I'm not an aluminium welder. Anyway, it wasn't expensive, so it was worth a shot. Found another one fairly cheaply, but this is an early one, but as you can see it's in very good condition. It's got its valves but nothing else, and it's obviously been blasted with the valves in, but you can see this is in damn good condition and has all its fins. And originally I was thinking, this is an early one, so it's got 5/16 holes here for the rear head bolts, and also, as I say, it's the quarter studs and the slightly smaller flange. And originally I was thinking, well, you know, it's dead easy, just drill these out to 3/8, and actually the later rocker box cover will fit onto this. But then it's not going to be secured so well, because you've got 5/16 holes, sorry, 3/16 holes, I think it is anyway. Correct me if I'm wrong, but 3/16 holes in the rocker box cover against quarter studs, so potentially slopping around. So I bit the bullet because I found another one, and hurrah! I mean, it looks a mess. It's just arrived. You can see they packed it in foam chips, which isn't ideal, but anyway, we can wash that off. It hasn't got any bits and pieces with it. It's filthy, but it's in one piece, and it's not bad. The valve seats are pretty good because I can cut those slightly just to freshen them up, but again, not pocketed. We'll be putting new valve guides in anyway. You can see, as normal, there's been a little blow by between the cylinders, but we'll probably use the usual technique of a sheet of glass and some valve grinding paste to straighten up that face. You can see the damn chips get everywhere. And there's also a bit of evidence where the exhaust has been blowing at the front here because the pipe's not been seated properly, so they've been using some goo on that to try and seal it. And there's one or two little tiny chips. But the first thing to do is to clean this up. And what I'm going to do that initially is I'm going to chuck it straight into the ultrasonic cleaner. So we'll do a before. There's your before, and we'll do an after it comes out of the ultrasonic cleaner. And just a quick word or two on that, following some questions originally. So I need to replenish this, because after the last use I drained it and cleaned it all out. It's 30 litres, and the logic behind that was that it was big enough to get at least a crankcase half in there. So I'll be replenishing that, and the fluid that you use in this is a water-based detergent. It's not a solvent or a degreaser or anything like that. And the actual detergent itself you can buy from any of the specialist retailers for these types of cleaners. They're all on the net. This is concentrate, so you dilute it 1 part to 10 parts water. They say distilled, but it doesn't have to be. And we'll make up 30 litres of that and fill the tank. And then I run this at an operating temperature of about 55 degrees. It says on the instructions for the fluid that the operating temperature can be anything between 50 and 80 degrees centigrade. I run it 55 to 60, and I run the ultrasonic side for 2 bouts of 15 minutes. So I run it for 15 minutes, I turn the piece over, and then I run it again, because what tends to happen is that the detergent and ultrasonics dislodges all the particles, but sometimes they can pool and sit on the flat surfaces. So if you turn it over, they'll then be dislodged and float down to the base of the tank, which is what we want to do. So that's what I'll do next. We'll replenish that. It takes an hour and a half to 2 hours to get up to temperature. So we'll put that on, go get a cup of tea, do a bit of prep work, and then I'll bring you back just as I'm about to put it in. Right, okay, tank topped up with 3 litres of concentrate to 27 litres of, roughly anyway, of soft water. I actually use rainwater out of the water, but make sure it's well filtered, and that usually works pretty well. So what we'll do then, as you can see, I've set it to get up to 55 centigrade. It's currently at 8, so you can see we've got a bit to do. But anyway, that's now flashing, so it's warming up. So we'll get the lid on, and as I say, that will take an hour and a half or so. But what I've found with this as well is that can be warming up, and the present temperature gauge can look as though it's not moved too much. Maybe you say up to sort of 14 or 20 degrees or whatever, but then if you give the contents a stir, the apparent temperature rises significantly, and that's obviously to do with where they've placed the sensor for that present temperature gauge. So we'll leave that to cook. We'll do a bit of tidying up with that and get rid of all that damn polystyrene chip stuff. But anyway, it's come quite a long way, this head, and it's in one piece, which is great news. And we'll let's try and see what we've got. But superficially, I'm pleased with it, because there doesn't appear to be any external damage, and it looks to be in good condition. Right, I'll bring you back when we start cooking. Right, here we are a couple of hours later, and it still says it's only at 18 centigrade. But let me show you something. So if I take the lid off, give it a bit of a stir. All of a sudden the temperature starts to go up. So let's just get the lid back up, knock everything over, and there we are, from 18 to 27 in a matter of seconds. So they've probably got a bit of a dubious spot for the temperature sensor. It's probably near the top of the unit, and it's heating from the bottom. So the key is to keep stirring, get some diffusion going, and then all of a sudden we start to rise fairly rapidly. So I'll give that another stir, and then when it's up to temperature we'll pop back. But in the meantime, just need to do a bit of cleaning up of all the pieces on the head. Right, the head's in, so it's not really quite up to temperature yet, but I'll give it a quick blast, because sometimes running the ultrasonic side of it seems to assist in giving an accurate temperature. So we've got it set to 15 minutes. We'll give it an initial 15-minute blast now. Right, first ultrasonic cycle done. It's just about up to 50 degrees, so it's nearly at operating temperature. It is steaming on the top, but you can't see the head for the absolute filthy solution, which is great news, which means it's cleaning it up. So what I'm going to do now, probably off camera because I need to root around and dig this out, is I'm going to turn it over, and then I'm probably going to set it for 20 minutes on the next cycle. So let me just get it out now, and we'll have a quick look at it before we turn it over. Okay, there it is, and it's coming on well actually. I'm pleased with that. Looking an awful lot better, and the solution's also cleaning up the domes as well. Bit to do around the front and sides here. As I say, we'll let the temperature increase. and we'll give it a bit longer, but yep, we're eating into that filth, which is great news. So right, we'll give it its second bath, upside down. Right, second phase just completed. As you can see, the bath is up to temp, and the filaments have been turned off. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to leave that to soak for a little while at the temperature. As you can see, I've turned it up a little, and then I'm going to come back, and I'll turn the head over and we'll give it one more ultrasonic session for 15 or 20 minutes. But we'll just let that sit there for the next half an hour or so, because in the meantime what I'm doing then is beginning to strip ancillary bits and pieces from the other heads. And it's a good job that I do have a mixture of heads, actually, because between them I'm going to get a good set of parts that are in good order, because there are some of these components that have been badly butchered. So first thing is, we've got a nice set of the main studs. The two minor studs out of one head are in a terrible state. One could be reused, but the other's rubbish. However, in this head here, these two are, there we go, these two are good. So we've got those to get out, and we want to do it without chewing the threads up, so we'll double nut those and take those out. We've got original nuts and washers for the carbs. Got the original nibs for the balancer pipe, so I've got rubber for that, so that's good. The most pleasing thing is we've got the original carb gaskets, but more importantly we've got the Bakelite ones, and these are quite difficult to get hold of now. And I think the intention of the Bakelite ones is to act as an insulator to prevent too much heat being transferred from the head to the carb. So I'm pleased about that. I hadn't noticed they were on the original head. And then with respect to the rocker feed union, then it's a good job we've got two of these. You see that one absolutely had it, but the other one's very good and will clean up nicely. So we'll keep ploughing away at that. The other thing that I've noticed is that obviously between these two I've got a full set of rocker spindles, rockers and tappets, etc. I've noticed this one is obviously fitted as it was intended. That one has been undone and there's no washer, so we'll need to check through that as to why somebody's been in there. So we'll take those off, and then we'll look at valves. We've got two full sets of valves and springs. We can measure up the springs when we get those off. But anyway, between this lot we should have a full good set of all the different components to build up the head. And if necessary, I can cut the valve seats. I've got the tools to do that, but I would imagine, unless they're very badly pitted, we'll just get away with lapping them in with grinding paste. But anyway, let's crack on. Right, just look at that after all its baths. Looks like new. Really pleased with that. What I like about this ultrasonic cleaner is, because you're not using any abrasive technique like bead blasting, grip blasting, sand blasting or whatever, then what happens when you get a deep clean such as this is you get the sort of fresh cast alloy sheen. It's not that noticeable on the camera here, but you don't get that sort of matte finish, and it's come out really well, including on the underside as well. Even cleaned out the inlet tracks there as well. So that's come up really well. As I say, almost looks like new. You can see there's that sort of sheen, matte, satin sheen on the metal. So that's now ready to have new valve guides inserted, the valve guides replaced. These ones actually don't look bad, but as I've got new valve guides and as we're at this stage, that'd be crazy not to replace them. So we'll do that. With respect to pillaging the two other heads for parts, then we're cracking on with that. The rocker spindles and the rockers and all the parts do look good. So next thing is to first of all take that set of valves and springs out, and we'll check the spring lengths on those and the condition of the valves and see if we can use those. If there are one or two suspect items there, then we've got others that we can pilfer from that other head there. So there's plenty to get on with. So next two stages then, we'll get that in the oven so we can replace the valve guides, and while that's heating up we'll get the valve spring compressor out and remove the valves and springs from that head. Bring you back shortly. Right everyone, it's now several days later again, and that's because just after the last clip I searched out the new valves guides that I got recently delivered, and they're the wrong ones. They're pre-71, probably 66 to 70. So I had to order the correct ones again. It was a mistake by the supplier, but I'll sell those on. And these are the correct ones from 71 onwards with the shoulder, and they're a much beefier valve guide. So I've done a bit in the meantime, and that is using the old valve spring compressor there. I've started taking the valves and springs out of this head, and initial inspection, they don't look too bad at all actually, and they're going to grind in pretty easily, I think. Clean up on the wire wheel and then hand grind them in. So we'll get the oven on. We'll get the valve guides in the freezer, and while the head, this one over here, is warming up, we'll finish removing the valves and springs off this head. Right, let's get cracking and I'll bring you back shortly. Right, the cylinder head's in the oven. The new valve guides are in the freezer, so we'll give them half an hour or so to cool down. As you can see, I've stripped the other head, and actually I've still got to check the valve the valve spring lengths yet, free lengths, just to make sure they're within tolerance, but the parts do look in reasonable condition. The only thing I have noticed is that underneath the valve spring seats, then there were these shims on each of the four valves on the head that I stripped, and those aren't in the parts book. So anyway, I'll just check up on that before we start building up, but the first thing to do is to get the guides in. I've got the right tool set for what they call guide servicing, so we've got the right sized punch to get the old ones out, and then we've got the drawbar with a couple of different ends. I think for the purposes of these guides we'll just use the flat blunt end with the right Allen key to turn this end to draw it in. So the way that this goes together is that this goes in from the valve head side, slot the guide onto this spindle, followed by, if you like, the spacer that pushes up against it, butts up against it, and then the nut on this end. Hold the nut with a spanner and turn this end with the Allen key, and then draw it in. And with this being roughly the right size at the valve end, then it draws it in pretty centrally. So anyway, that's the right tool for that. So we're all set to go. I'll need hands everywhere for this actually, but I might just set up the GoPro actually, and we'll do a quick time lapse on it. But right, we're just about ready to go once the head's heated up, and in the meantime we'll get all the gloves and kit ready to bring this into the garage from the oven, so as not to get burnt. Right, okay, there we are. Guides in successfully, and all seated nicely and tight, even with the head hot, which is why I was struggling a little bit to wind them in, but I got there in the end actually, while the head is still got plenty of heat in it. Now, one of the other things that I did notice actually is recently is that there is a very, very minor crack, and come on, let's see if we can focus. not doing too well. Let me get a pointer. Just there. You can see it just running down there. So we're going to deal with that while we're at this. And the way we'll do that is that crack just stops round about here. Very fine. You just see it on the... It's not focusing very well, I'm sorry about that. You can just see it across there, perhaps. So what we'll do is we're going to drill a very small hole at the very end of that crack to try and stop it running, and then we'll Lumi weld it. And we're probably going to have a go at doing that now, while the head still has a load of heat in it. And we should be able to do that. So the first thing to do is get a drill out. So we'll again try and time lapse this on the GoPro. Right, there we are then. Job done. So new guides are in. We've managed to do the repair. It's not as clean as I would like it. I do struggle sometimes with Lumi weld on large pieces because they dissipate the heat too quickly. It looks a little black around there, but I've cleaned it up, and it's certainly done the job. It's absolutely rock hard. I've dressed it, and also, I don't know whether you can see from the other side, there it is. You can just see that the drill, the drilled hole has been plugged, and that's what we wanted. And that hole is to stop the crack from developing further, and we'll see how that goes. But I think that's going to be good enough. I'm pretty pleased with that. Head's still very hot, so we'll leave that to cool down, and we'll call that a video at last after probably a significant period of time actually waiting for bits and pieces. But there we are, head prepared and ready to build up now before we actually place it onto the bike. And also we've got more than enough parts now to finish building that head up, but we'll save that for the next video and get this one published and online, as this is going to be plenty long enough anyway. So we'll call it that. We'll leave it at that for now and call it there. So thanks very much for watching, everybody. Thanks for your interest, comments, and any subscriptions, and thanks for your patience. It's taken me a while to get this one out, but we've got there in the end, and I'm pleased with the result. So next stop in quick succession will be us building that head ready to install. Thanks again, everybody. See you again soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.